The other woman shoved me, threatening a miscarriage. My husband, Mark, just sneered. "You should just get your tubes tied and adopt our child." 5 minutes later, a fleet of black, government-plated SUVs, bringing 10 military doctors from Walter Reed, blockaded the gate. His face went white. He knelt. "Colonel? Sir? What are you doing here?" The smooth jazz and the warm, glittering lights of the five-star hotel ballroom did nothing to warm me. I sat there beside Mark, my husband. He smiled and nodded at partners and employees, his hand resting on my waist. It was a casual grip, but one designed to show the world we were the perfect, happy couple. My belly was already a slight round curve beneath the soft silk dress, where 2 tiny lives were growing, day by day. This was the annual holiday gala for Thompson Legacy Construction, the empire Mark had built over nearly 10 years. And as the CEO's wife, I had to be here, the finishing touch on his success. But my smile had frozen hours ago. The morning sickness and fatigue of my pregnancy were only part of it. What truly exhausted me was the deep unease coiling in my stomach. My gaze unconsciously drifted toward Jessica, Mark's young assistant. She was poured into a tight red dress, showcasing every curve. Jessica didn't move like a normal employee. She navigated the party like a hostess, and the look she gave Mark wasn't admiration, it was possession. "You should drink less, or you'll get drunk," Jessica cooed, stepping up to adjust Mark's tie right in front of me. Her hand brushed his chest, a brazenly intimate gesture. Mark just chuckled, not pushing her away. I know. You talk too much." I tightened my grip on my glass of sparkling cider, the cold seeping into my palm. "It's just work," I told myself. Jessica was a good, efficient assistant, so Mark favored her. I'd told myself that hundreds of times. Every time I saw them whispering, every time I saw late-night texts, he quickly deleted. But a woman's intuition has its own logic, and mine was screaming that this was not simple. "I'm a little tired. I'm going to get some air in the hall," I whispered to Mark, keeping my voice steady. He turned, his face a mask of concern. "Are you okay? Do you want me to come with you?" "No, it's fine. You stay with your guests." I smiled, knowing it looked brittle. I stood up, feeling Jessica's sharp gaze slice across me. I tried to walk steadily, gracefully, even as my legs felt weak. The hallway outside was much quieter. I found a sofa in a quiet alcove, sat down heavily, and let out a long breath. I closed my eyes, rubbing my stomach. "My loves," I whispered, "I'm sorry. Mommy should be happier." Just then, I heard those familiar high heels and a cloying voice I couldn't mistake. "When are you going to leave that old hag? I don't want our child to be illegitimate forever." It was Jessica. My heart seized. I held my breath, shrinking deeper into the shadows. The ballroom door was slightly ajar, just enough for me to hear the deep, warm voice of the man I called my husband. "Soon, baby. Just hang on a little longer," Mark soothed her. His voice was so gentle, a gentleness I hadn't heard directed at me in a very long time. "I just need to lock in that DoD contract through my father-in-law. The old man is tough. His daughter has to be kept happy for him to sign off. Once I get that contract, this whole company and me will belong to you and our baby." Crash. The glass of cider slipped from my hand, shattering on the marble floor. The cold liquid splashed across my dress, but I felt nothing. My ears were ringing, my mind empty. Father-in-law, contract, our baby. The words were poisoned needles, stabbing directly into the heart that had, until this moment, been filled with love and trust. It shattered, far more completely than the glass at my feet. 6 months ago, I still believed I was the happiest woman alive. Our life was still sweet. Mark still came home on time, still hugged me from behind while I was cooking, still whispered that he loved me. He said meeting me was the best luck of his life. I believed him, unconditionally. The first crack appeared over something small. A receipt, left in the pocket of a suit jacket I was taking to the dry cleaner. It was from a luxury jeweler for a sum that made me gasp, $25,000 for a limited edition men's watch. I searched his entire closet. The watch was nowhere. He never wore it. That night, I made a special dinner. When he was in a good mood, I brought it up, trying to sound casual. "Honey, I saw this gorgeous watch the other day. Maybe we should get a matching pair?" I showed him a picture of that exact watch in a magazine. He glanced at it, his face flickering with confusion for just a second before he smoothed it over. He laughed and stroked my hair. "You have great taste, but I already bought that one." "Really? How come I've never seen you wear it?" "Oh, that." He paused, then adopted a serious tone. "It was a gift for an important partner. Someone who's helping us a lot with a big deal. It's just business diplomacy, honey. These things are complicated. Don't worry about it." The answer seemed plausible, but his initial hesitation left a small splinter of doubt. An important partner who required a $25,000 gift? But I chose to trust him. I told myself not to be suspicious, not to meddle in his work. That splinter might have stayed dormant if not for a brunch with friends the following weekend. We were all laughing and talking. I was idly scrolling through Instagram when I saw a new post from Jessica. She was on my friends list, an act I had once thought was normal. The photo was of a man's and a woman's hands intertwined on the steering wheel of a luxury car. The caption, "Surprise gift from my man. Door thanks for always spoiling me." What made me freeze wasn't the cheesy caption. It was the watch glittering on the man's wrist. It was the $25,000 limited edition. I recognized it instantly. My heart began to pound. A cold dread ran down my spine. I showed the photo to Mark, my voice trembling. "Mark, this guy's watch. It looks familiar." Mark looked at the screen. His face went rigid for a split second, then he burst out laughing. It was too loud, too forced. "That's a coincidence, honey. It's a limited model, but I'm sure a few people in this city have it. You're always overthinking things." He quickly changed the subject, pulling me into the group's conversation. But I couldn't hear anything else. A coincidence? It was too perfect. His clumsy lie, combined with the watch on his secretary's boyfriend, planted a seed of suspicion. I lived like a sleepwalker in the days that followed. I still smiled, still took care of Mark, but my mind was elsewhere. I was waiting for a chance, a single crack in his facade to either confirm or destroy the storm building inside me. The chance came on a Thursday afternoon. Mark said he had an urgent, unexpected business trip upstate to survey a new site. He packed in a hurry, kissed my forehead, and promised to be back soon. "Take care of yourself while I'm gone. Don't overdo it." His words sounded so fake. The moment his car disappeared down the street, I moved. My heart hammered as I stood before the safe hidden behind the painting in his study. It was his private safe, where he kept important documents and some emergency cash. I'd never been curious about it. I trusted him. Today was different. My hand shook as I entered the code. A number I used to be so proud of. My birthday. "The password to my most important things will always be you," he'd said. Click. The heavy steel door swung open. Inside, there wasn't much cash and no business contracts, just a dark blue file folder. I pulled it out, trembling. The first thing that fell out was a birth certificate. The child's name was unfamiliar, but the father's name was painfully familiar, Mark Thompson. The mother, Jessica Davis. The child was 2 years old. The thin paper in my hand felt as heavy as a tombstone. 2 years. He had betrayed me almost as soon as we were married, maybe even before. I had been living in an elaborate play for years without knowing. Below the birth certificate was a DNA test. The conclusion, in stark black ink, 99.99%, probability of paternity, undeniable proof. And finally, the thing that shattered me completely, the deed to a luxury downtown condo. The co-owners, Mark Thompson and Jessica Davis. All the pieces clicked into place, forming a brutal, hideous picture. The secret apartment, the secret child, the multi-year affair. I was just the perfect cover, a tool for him to hide behind, a way for him to exploit my family's connections. I laughed. A dry, bitter sound. Tears began to fall, hot on my cheeks. I was such a fool. Just then, I felt a small kick in my belly. And then another, my babies. They were moving. The first time I had felt them so clearly. In the middle of this wreckage, a fierce new life was pushing forward. I clutched my stomach. The tears still fell, but they were no longer tears of weakness. They were the tears of a mother. For them, I had to be strong. For them, I could not break. After that night at the gala, I returned home in a terrifying silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just quietly took a shower, changed my clothes, and lay down in bed, my back to Mark. My stillness was more frightening than any hurricane, and Mark, ever the strategist, knew it. He didn't sleep. I could feel him lying there, tense, probably calculating his next performance. The next morning, Mark was waiting at the dining table. He hadn't gone to work. His face was haggard, his eyes bloodshot. "Claire," he called out, his voice hoarse. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. I just sat down opposite him. I wanted to see what he would say, what lie he would spin. Mark walked over and suddenly, he knelt in front of me. The action startled me. "I'm sorry," he said, looking up with a face full of anguish. "It's all my fault. I was wrong, Claire." Tears welled up in the eyes of the man I had loved. He grabbed my hand, pressing it to his cheek. "I know you heard everything, but it's not what you think, I swear." "Not what I think?" I finally spoke, my voice like ice. "Then what is it? Explain." "She trapped me," Mark said, his voice full of righteous anger. "Jessica. She tricked me. That baby. It's not mine. She was seeing someone else and pinned it on me to force my hand. I was just a little weak, a moment of weakness. You understand? I ended it. I swear I did. But she wouldn't let go. She threatened to destroy our family." He spun a fantastic tale, a story where he was the victim, a husband who had strayed but was devoted to his family. He said he kept quiet because he was afraid of upsetting me, afraid of hurting the pregnancy. He promised to fix everything, to fire Jessica, to give her a severance package to make her disappear. His performance was flawless. The words, the tears, the trembling grip on my hand. It was all so real. If this had been me a month ago, I might have believed him. I might have softened, hugged him, and forgiven him. But the me of today, the me who had seen the contents of that safe, found his performance pathetic and disgusting. I let him talk until he had exhausted his script. When only his choked sobs remained, I slowly pulled my hand away. "You want me to believe you?" I asked, my voice flat. "I'm begging you," he nodded frantically. "Give me one more chance, Claire. One last chance. I'll arrange a meeting. All three of us. I'll make her tell you the truth to your face. Okay?" I looked deep into his eyes. They used to be my whole world. Now they were just a mirror of his lies. But I nodded. "Fine. I want to hear it from her." We met at a quiet garden cafe, a place private enough for a difficult conversation but public enough to keep things civil. I arrived early and chose a table in the back. I ordered a chamomile tea, trying to keep my mind calm. 10 minutes later, Mark and Jessica arrived together. Mark wore his mask of pained regret. But Jessica, she shocked me. Gone was the defiant, sexy woman from the party. Today, she wore a loose-fitting maternity dress, pale and modest. Her face was free of makeup, sallow and tired, her eyes swollen from crying. She looked like a true victim. They sat down. The silence was suffocating. Mark spoke first. "Tell her," he said to Jessica, his voice firm but laced with pity. "Tell my wife the truth." Jessica stared at the table, her hands twisting in her lap. Her shoulders trembled. Then she began to cry. Soft, broken sobs. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "It's all my fault. I wasn't strong. I've caused so much trouble for your family." I stayed silent, stirring my cold tea. The play had begun. "The truth is," Jessica looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. "This baby, it's not Mark's. I lied to him. I was with someone else, and he abandoned me. I was so scared. So I told Mark it was his. I just wanted support. I know I was wrong. I'm so sorry." She wept as she told her tragic story, a story of being abandoned, of being terrified to be a single mother. It was a performance designed to soften any heart. Mark sat beside her, sighing and shaking his head, playing the part of the good man who had been emotionally manipulated. "Claire," Jessica suddenly leaned forward, reaching for my hand. I pulled it back. "I'm begging you, please forgive Mark. He's innocent. He was only trying to help me because he's too kind. Please don't break up your family because of me. I promise I'll take the money Mark offered, and I'll go far away. I'll never bother you again." Her words were a knife, twisting in my wound. She was trying to paint me as the selfish, unforgiving wife. I looked at the two of them, acting out their script. They were so in sync. For a second, I almost laughed at their audacity. I glanced under the table. I saw Mark's hand, resting on his own leg, secretly reach over and give Jessica's hand a gentle, reassuring pat, an encouragement, a good job. That was all I needed. I put a $20 bill on the table for my tea and slowly stood up. Mark and Jessica looked up, surprised. "Claire, where are you going?" Mark asked, panicked. I looked at them. For the first time in this whole conversation, I smiled. A tiny smile that made them both freeze. "I understand now," I said. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't go home. I just drove, ending up, as I knew I would, at the quiet, tree-lined street of the military base housing where I grew up. My mother saw me walk in, her face etched with worry. I just shook my head, said I was tired, and wanted to rest. She didn't press, just went to the kitchen to make me a comforting cup of chamomile tea. My father was in the living room, reading the paper. Colonel Harrison, retired. A lifetime in the service had given him an unnerving calm and a gaze that saw through everything. He didn't need to ask. He just knew. He folded his paper, took off his glasses, and gestured to the seat beside him. "What's wrong, honey?" His voice was deep and steady, the sound of absolute safety. I sat down, and the dam of my composure broke. I buried my face in his shoulder and sobbed. I didn't tell him about the DNA test or the condo. I just cried, like a child who had been hurt and had run to the only place that mattered. He just sat there, patting my back. His hand was large and warm. When I finally quieted down, he handed me a glass of water. "Is it Mark?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. "Is he treating you poorly?" I nodded. "I never trusted him," Dad sighed. "He's smart, but it's a shifty kind of smart, a man whose eyes are always darting, always calculating. He's not the kind of man who could walk with my daughter for a lifetime." His words stunned me. He had seen it from the beginning. He just respected my choice. I was the only one who had been blind. "I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't listen to you." He waved my apology away. "Marriage is your choice. The happiness and the pain are yours to bear. We can't live your life for you, but you remember this." He looked me straight in the eye, his voice taking on the sharp edge of a commander. "You are my daughter. You are your grandfather's granddaughter. You can be hurt, you can fall, but you will absolutely not let anyone trample on your honor, or this family's. If that man has wronged you, you don't need to tolerate it. You tell me." His words were like a jolt of electricity. It wasn't just comfort, it was a guarantee. Behind me was the full weight and honor of a military family. I was not alone. I wiped my tears and nodded, my spine straight. "Yes, sir. I understand." I stayed the night. For the first time in months, I slept deeply. The next morning, as I drove off the base, I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My eyes were still puffy, but the fear was gone. In its place was a cold, hard resolve. I returned to the house I once called home. Now, every wall, every familiar object seemed to mock my stupidity. I had to continue the act, to play the part of the forgiving wife who had been convinced by her husband's pathetic lies. That night, Mark came home with a huge bouquet of roses. "For you and the babies," he said, smiling. "Let's forget what happened, okay? It was just a nightmare." I took the flowers. "I trust you," I said. My voice soft, while my heart screamed, "Liar." He visibly relaxed, believing he had dodged the bullet. He didn't know the fire wasn't out. It had just gone underground, turning into magma, waiting to erupt. My life became a double act. By day, I was the loving, docile wife. By night, I was a woman on a mission. I found the best divorce attorney in the city, a shark known for handling high-asset corporate cases. My first call was made from the bathroom, with the shower running to mask my voice. I told her everything, from the watch to the safe. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, "you are not alone. We will get you and your children everything you are owed." End quote. At night, when Mark was asleep, I went to his study. My heart pounded. I inserted a small flash drive into his laptop and copied everything. The Excel files showing shady money transfers. The contracts that, inexplicably, included Jessica's name. The emails between them that were not about work. I copied it all, encrypted it, and sent it to a secure, anonymous email account. This went on for a month. Mark, believing I was back under his control, became sickeningly attentive. He bought me pregnancy vitamins, took me shopping, even tried to cook. It was all so perfect, and it all made me sick. I needed one final push. I had one last card to play. That night, I made a simple dinner. When we were almost finished, I set down my fork, my face a picture of nervous hesitation. "Mark," I said softly, I have something to tell you." He looked up, curious. "What is it, honey? You look strange." I took a deep breath, putting my hand on my stomach. I looked him straight in the eye, willing tears of joy to well up. "Mark, we're pregnant." The fork clattered from his hand, the sound sharp in the quiet room. He froze. His face went stiff. The joy I expected never came. Instead, for one split second, I saw it. Pure, unadulterated panic. His pupils contracted. His smile froze. He was terrified. But Mark was a brilliant actor. A second later, the panic vanished, replaced by a flawless mask of ecstatic joy. "Really? Are you serious?" He leaped up, rushing around the table to grab me, lifting me off my feet. "Oh my God, I'm going to be a dad. Claire, I love you. I love you so much." He kissed me all over, talking about names, about the nursery. His joy looked so real, but I couldn't forget that first second. His embrace was cold. His kiss was hollow. He wasn't happy about the babies. He was happy because he thought this new, stronger chain would bind me to him forever, securing his access to my family's influence. The ace had been played. Now, I just had to watch the storm it created. The news of my pregnancy was a bomb. It didn't just throw Mark off balance, it sent shockwaves through his shadow family. Mark became intensely irritable. The late-night phone calls increased. He would sneak onto the balcony, his voice a low, angry whisper. I'd pretend to get a glass of water, catching fragments. "Stop making trouble, okay? I told you I'd take care of you. She's pregnant now, it's more complicated. You have to give me time. Don't threaten me. I'm not scared." I knew Jessica was unraveling. The prize she thought she had secured now had a new, powerful protector, his legitimate, pregnant wife. Her patience was at its end. One evening, he left his phone in the bathroom. The screen lit up with a rapid-fire series of texts. I looked. They were from Jessica, and they were unhinged. "Are you really abandoning us?" "I'm not stupid, Mark. If I can't have you, that wife of yours won't live in peace either. I'll tell her everything. I swear to God. I give you 2 days. Fix this, or I'll tell your whole company what a hypocrite their CEO is." My heart pounded as I read. I didn't delete them. I just put the phone back. That night, I deliberately chattered on about baby shopping. "Honey," I asked innocently, "maybe we should ask Jessica to help us shop for baby things this weekend? She has such great taste." It was like throwing a match into gasoline. Mark's face darkened. "Are you crazy?" he snapped, his voice dangerously loud. "What the hell would she know? Don't you ever mention that name in front of me again?" It was the first time he had ever yelled at me. I recoiled, pretending to be hurt, my shoulders shaking. I'm sorry. I just thought." He immediately realized his mistake and pulled me into a hug. "I'm sorry, Claire. I'm just stressed from work. It's not your fault." I leaned into him, my mind clear. His act was cracking. The pressure from both sides was making him lose control. I knew Jessica's rage wasn't just for Mark. It was aimed at me and my babies. That evening, as I was folding the tiny onesies my mother had bought, I saw a familiar car parked at the end of our street. It was Jessica's. She didn't get out. She was just sitting there, watching the house. I couldn't see her face clearly, but I could feel the hatred radiating from the car. My blood ran cold. She was here. After 15 minutes, the car quietly drove away, but its presence was a clear warning. I couldn't sleep that night. I waited until 2 a.m. when Mark was deeply asleep. I took my phone to the balcony. I didn't call my lawyer. I called one number, my father's. He picked up on the second ring, his voice as steady as if it were midday. "Hello?" My throat tightened. "Dad? It's Claire." "I know. Why are you still awake?" I took a shaky breath, forcing my voice to be clear. "Dad, I think something is about to happen." The line was silent for a beat. I knew that was all he needed to hear. He understood the gravity. He didn't ask what or why. "My phone password," I continued, "is Mom's birthday. Everything is in there." "I understand." My father's voice was calm and strong. "Go to sleep." The call ended. It was short, but it was more effective than any long promise. I knew my father, the old soldier. He would not sit idly by. He would act. I went back to bed and looked at the man sleeping beside me, the man who had put me and my children in this danger. I felt nothing. The opening ceremony for the new branch was held at a luxury resort upstate, a perfect showcase for his success. I stood by Mark, wearing the smile of a happy, supportive wife. My belly was prominent now, and every kick was a reminder of who I was fighting for. I knew this was an important day for Mark, and I knew Jessica's desperation could explode at any moment. And then she arrived, uninvited. She glided into the reception, poured into a skin-tight black dress, her makeup dark, her eyes burning with a terrible hatred. She floated past me like a phantom, then stopped and signaled for me to follow. I knew I couldn't run. I had to face her, once and for all. I told Mark I needed to use the restroom, then quietly followed Jessica toward the secluded stairwell, a space of dim, yellow light and cold air. "You think you've won, don't you?" Jessica spoke first, her voice a hiss of jealousy, using that belly to chain him. "Do you really think you can beat me?" I looked at her calmly. "I don't have time to play games of winning and losing with you. If you want to talk, speak respectfully." My composure seemed to drive her mad. "Respectfully? You stole my man? You stole my child's future, and you expect me to be respectful?" She closed the distance between us, spitting out each word, her breath laced with hatred. "You think that pregnancy will hold him? Dream on. That's between him and me." I placed a hand over my stomach, an unconscious gesture to protect my children. "It has nothing to do with you." "Nothing to do with me?" Jessica laughed, a shrill, hysterical sound. "Everything about him has to do with me. You and that little burden in your belly are the only obstacles." She lunged. I had no time to react. Jessica's hands, her fingernails painted bright red, shoved hard against my abdomen. It was a vicious, powerful force, driven by malice. "You and the baby have to disappear." My world tilted. I lost my balance. My body felt suspended in midair. I desperately tried to grasp something, but there was only empty space. My scream was swallowed by the deserted stairwell. The last thing I saw was Jessica's twisted, triumphant smile before my body tumbled down the cold marble steps. The pain hit like 100 knives ripping through me. My head struck a step, everything blurred, dissolving into indistinct streaks of light. I heard shouts, the rapid pounding of footsteps. I lay curled at the bottom of the stairs, and a warm, wet feeling spread beneath me. "Blood. My babies," I whispered. Panic strangled my heart. Through the haze of pain and tears, I saw Mark rush toward me. He looked genuinely terrified. I almost reached out to him, my husband, the father of my children, but he didn't stop. He stepped right over me and ran straight to Jessica, who was leaning against the wall, feigning shock and trembling. "Are you okay? Did you hurt yourself?" he asked, his voice filled with overwhelming worry and concern for her. I lay there, watching the scene. The physical pain was nothing compared to the agony crushing my soul. In the moment of life or death for me and his children, the first thing he did was comfort his mistress. Only after ensuring Jessica was fine did Mark finally turn and run back to me. His face was still pale with fright. People began swarming around us, whispering anxiously. "Call an ambulance!" someone screamed. Mark knelt beside me. I thought, perhaps, a last flicker of conscience had ignited within him. But no. He leaned in close, his face near mine, his eyes cold and distant. His voice was not concern. It was a chilling command, whispered through the chaos. "You should get your tubes tied," he hissed, the words piercing my ear like tiny needles. "And adopt our child. You should consider yourself lucky to get that much." My world didn't shatter from the fall or the bleeding. It shattered from that sentence. The words of a devil. He didn't just want my children dead. He wanted to strip me of my motherhood forever and force me to raise his bastard child. It was the ultimate, unimaginable cruelty. Tears streamed from my eyes. I wanted to scream, to curse him, but only broken sounds escaped my throat. The pain in my abdomen grew worse, and my consciousness began to fade. The last image I saw before the darkness consumed me was Mark's face, familiar, yet alien, the face of a demon. Just then, a strange sound echoed from outside. It wasn't the usual blare of an ambulance siren. It was a deep, authoritative, and steady rumble, like distant thunder, growing closer. Everyone froze, peering toward the main entrance. Then, the impressive sight appeared. Not one, but a convoy of black SUVs with government plates, stopping precisely in front of the main lobby. The emergency lights flashed silently, creating an invisible pressure that strangely calmed the chaotic space. The door of the lead command vehicle opened, and a tall man in a captain's uniform stepped out, his posture impeccable. Following him from the other vehicles was an entire team of military doctors and nurses from Walter Reed, moving with speed and professionalism. Mark stood frozen, still kneeling beside me. His face instantly changed, morphing from feigned panic to unconcealable bewilderment. He stammered, "The military? Why are they here?" The door of the second command vehicle opened, and a middle-aged man with a straight posture and graying hair, dressed in civilian clothes but exuding undeniable authority, slowly stepped out. It was my father. The moment Mark saw him, he looked struck by lightning. His body began to tremble, his legs giving out. He slowly crumpled, falling to his knees on the cold marble floor. His jaw dropped, his eyes wide, staring at my father as if he were a ghost. "See, Colonel? Sir? What are you doing here?" His voice cracked, a mixture of terror, confusion, and utter disbelief. The bomb he had so desperately tried to bury had just exploded in his face, at the moment he least expected it. My father didn't answer. He didn't even glance at Mark. The gaze of the old soldier was fixed on a single target. His daughter, lying broken in a pool of blood. "Move," my father commanded, his voice deep and sharp, an order no one dared to disobey. Two military medics immediately approached, gently but firmly taking me from Mark's lax grip. They placed me on a waiting gurney. The procedures were swift, professional, and perfectly coordinated. A female doctor checked my pulse and blood pressure instantly, while another started an IV drip. "Patient is critical. Severe blood loss. Signs of shock. We need to transfer her immediately," the female doctor announced, her voice clear and urgent. I was wheeled past Mark, who remained kneeling on the floor. I saw him look up, his face ashen, drained of all color. He looked small, pathetic. Inside the military ambulance, there was no panic, only intense focus. I felt a warm hand grip mine. "It's Dad," he whispered. He said nothing more, just sat beside me, his presence a solid mountain shielding me from the storm. "Straight to Walter Reed. Notify the Chief of Staff to prepare Operating Room 1. Lock down all information," my father ordered over a secure radio. His voice was calm, yet full of absolute authority. As the ambulance siren faded into the night, I drifted into unconsciousness. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I knew I was safe. When I woke, the familiar antiseptic smell of a hospital filled my nose. I was in a clean, quiet, specialized recovery room. My mother sat beside the bed, her eyes red. Seeing me open my eyes, she quickly grabbed my hand. "You're awake? Thank God." "The babies," I whispered. the first and only question on my mind. My mother smiled, a radiant smile despite her tears. "Don't worry, honey, they're safe. Your father brought the best doctors. Not only did they save you, but they found out." My mother paused, her voice thick with emotion. "Claire, you're pregnant with twins, a boy and a girl. They are both strong and resilient, just like their mother." "Twins?" I was stunned. Tears streamed out, but they were tears of infinite gratitude and happiness. In the ashes of betrayal and malice, 2 tiny lives had not only survived but were thriving. They were a miracle, the most precious gift life had given me. In the days that followed in the special recovery room, I was enveloped in silence. All electronic devices were restricted, and only my parents were allowed to visit. The outside world and its storms were shut out. I focused entirely on the lives growing inside me, feeling the gentle nudges of my 2 little angels. They were everything I had, the reason to be strong. 2 days later, my father visited. His face was calm, but his eyes held a cold, sharp resolve. He pulled up a chair and began to peel an apple, his knife strokes precise. "That Mark is raising hell outside," my father said slowly, without emotion. "He's demanding to see you. The hospital refused, per our request. It's time to give him an answer." I looked at him, understanding. "What are you planning, Dad?" My father placed the peeled apple on a small plate and looked at me. "You need peace to carry these children. To ensure that wild animal needs to believe his prey is no longer valuable." He paused, then continued, "I'm going to meet him and tell him we couldn't save the children." My heart ached. I knew it was a necessary deception, but having to lie about their existence, even temporarily, hurt. But I knew he was right. This was the only way for Mark and Jessica to drop their guard, to expose their true selves. I didn't witness the meeting, but my mother told me about it that evening. Mark was pacing the waiting room like a caged animal. When my father walked out, his face was etched with perfectly disguised grief. Mark rushed toward him. "Dad, how is Claire? The babies? Are they okay?" he asked anxiously. My father was silent for a long moment, then let out a heavy sigh. "We couldn't save them." My mother recounted that Mark froze. He stared at my father, then slowly slumped onto a cold bench. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with genuine-sounding sobs. It was a flawless performance. But my mother, watching from a hidden corner, caught the moment before he covered his face, a faint, undeniable smile of relief on his lips, a flash of liberation in his eyes, the happy tears of a traitor. My father continued gravely. "The doctor said the fall was too severe, combined with prior emotional instability. Claire needs complete isolation for psychological treatment. She can't have visitors. Just go home, and I'll call you." Mark nodded between sobs, stood up unsteadily, bowed to my father, and walked away dejectedly. He looked miserable, but I knew he was celebrating inside. His biggest obstacle was cleared. He was free to pursue Jessica and the acquisition of my family's fortune. After Mark left, my hospital room became a silent command center. I was no longer a weak patient, but the focal point of a silently building storm. The next morning, my father brought a laptop. "I need your phone." I gave him the phone, the weapon I had prepared long ago. "The password is Mom's birthday. Everything is in the folder labeled Evidence." My father connected the phone to the computer. He silently opened the folder. On the screen were the files, audio recordings, the condo deed, wire transfer statements, Jessica's threatening texts. I saw his hand, calloused from a lifetime of service, tremble slightly as he opened each file. He listened to the recordings, read Jessica's threats, and reviewed the bank statements detailing transfers of millions into her account. His face was emotionless, but his jaw was clenched, blue veins bulging at his temples. His was a silent rage, more destructive than any scream. When he was done, he copied all the data to his computer and disconnected the phone. He didn't call any military brass. He made 2 short calls. The first was to a close friend high up in the FBI's white-collar crime division. "Hello, John? It's Harrison. Long time. I have a serious dossier here regarding the economic misconduct of a private construction company. Seems pretty severe. I'll send it over for your review. The second was to a well-known investigative economic journalist. Hey Chris, it's Harrison. Got a story for you, it's juicy. Love, money, fraud, embezzlement. Interested? I'll forward some preliminary files. After the 2 calls, my father closed the laptop. The wheels of justice had begun to turn. I lay in bed, my hands on my belly. I felt Liam and Ava kick gently, as if cheering me on. The storm was brewing outside, but in this small room I felt only peace and fierce life. I knew I wasn't just fighting for justice, I was clearing a path for my 2 angels to enter a world free of deceit and cruelty. The storm hit faster than I expected. It wasn't loud, it was silent, but devastating, a powerful undertow capable of sinking a massive ship. The news of Mark's downfall reached me through my mother's visits. She spoke without glee, her voice matter-of-fact, like a newscaster reporting from a faraway place. The first blow came from where Mark least expected it. The lucrative DoD contract he had used our marriage to secure was abruptly canceled at the last minute due to strategic changes. It was the shot heard round the world. Immediately, the dominoes fell. A team of economic inspectors descended upon Thompson Legacy Construction. They worked day and night, scrutinizing every ledger. All company and personal bank accounts were frozen for investigation. He called me dozens of times, my mother recounted, peeling an orange, her voice even. He was hysterical. He kept asking why and who was behind it. I just said I didn't know and hung up. Mark, deprived of funds, saw his ongoing projects grind to a halt. Creditors, who had once fawned over him, descended like vultures, besieging his office with angry signs and demands. The successful young CEO was reduced to a pathetic failure, hiding within his own collapsing company. The empire Mark had built, partly with talent, but mostly with lies and manipulation, collapsed in less than a week. Its foundation was rotten. A strong wind was all it took. I listened to my mother's reports with detached irony. He had once arrogantly said I'd be begging on the streets without him. Now, he was the one facing ruin. Life truly was fair, sometimes cruelly so. I rubbed my stomach. My babies, I'm not happy about his failure. I'm just relieved that a malignant tumor has been cut from our lives. You reap what you sow. That's the first lesson I want you to remember. While Mark was reeling from the corporate chaos, the final blow, the one aimed at his honor and character, was struck. The security camera footage from the resort, clearly showing Jessica deliberately pushing me down the stairs, had somehow been leaked and went viral instantly. The video was crystal clear. It exposed Jessica's malicious act and Mark's initial cold indifference. A true storm of public outrage erupted. Social media tracked down the vicious other woman and the callous husband. Their images flooded news sites. People cursed them. The pressure from public opinion was so immense that authorities had no choice but to act. Jessica was summoned for police questioning regarding attempted battery and aggravated assault. My lawyer informed me that with the undeniable video evidence and my medical records, Jessica was unlikely to escape punishment. And that was when Mark's most contemptible face was revealed. When questioned by the police as a material witness, he didn't hesitate to pin all the blame on his mistress. According to my lawyer, Mark testified that he was completely unaware of the conflict between Jessica and me. He claimed Jessica was acting out of unfounded jealousy and had instigated the confrontation and the fall. He played the part of the grieving husband, a victim deceived and whose family was ruined by his crazed mistress. He turned himself from an accomplice into a pathetic victim. Hearing this, I could only shake my head and smile faintly. The love Jessica had boasted of, the man she had sacrificed everything for, didn't hesitate to discard her like an old shoe to save himself. A relationship built on deceit and greed could only end in betrayal. I no longer cared what sentence they received. They had already sentenced themselves long ago. That I felt pity only for the children. Jessica's child and my Liam and Ava, all innocent lives caught in the adult's vicious cycle. A week after the fall, with my health stabilized and my 2 lives absolutely safe, Colonel Harrison decided it was time to leave. The plan was executed in absolute silence. Only my parents and I knew. The military hospital, with its strict security, was an impenetrable fortress. But my father knew it wasn't a permanent solution. A cornered, wounded animal only becomes more dangerous. Mark and that girl will look for ways to probe once the initial shock wears off, he told me one afternoon. We have to be one step ahead. You need a place of complete peace to rest, a place the past can't touch. That night, I didn't sleep. I packed a few loose dresses into a small suitcase, the only items I took from my old marriage. Everything else, the gifts, the mementos, I left behind. Around 3:40 a.m., as the city slept, a silent military ambulance, lights off, pulled up to the hospital's back gate. My mother hugged me tightly, her thin shoulders trembling. She whispered nothing, only pressing a small box into my hand. Your grandmother's pearl earrings. Keep them. They will be a dowry for my granddaughter someday. Tears filled my eyes. I hugged her tight. My father stood beside us, placing a hand on my shoulder, a small pat that contained 1,000 words of advice. Get in, honey. I'll handle everything here. I got into the ambulance without looking back, afraid I would break down. The vehicle rolled in silence, taking me through a secure route to the airport. I bypassed all security checks. Everything was meticulously arranged. Sitting in a private waiting lounge, I unconsciously rubbed my belly. My loves, we are about to start a new journey, just the three of us. As the plane took off, cutting through the thick clouds to meet the first rays of dawn, I looked down at the shrinking city. That place held my past, my pain, my betrayal, and a dead love. My destination was a peaceful coastal town, a strange place that felt instantly familiar. My father had secured a small house down a quiet alley, just a few minutes' walk from the beach. It wasn't grand, but it had a small yard full of bougainvillea and a balcony that overlooked a distant patch of blue ocean. I started my new life with a new name and a new phone number. All connections to the past were severed, except for my short, secure weekly calls with my father. He didn't say much about Mark or Jessica. He just said things were under control and urged me to focus on the most important thing, taking care of myself and the babies. The days flowed by slowly and peacefully. In the mornings, I woke to the gentle sound of the waves and birdsong. I bought fresh, organic produce and cooked nourishing meals. I no longer had to force myself to eat gourmet dishes in fancy restaurants. I ate simple, comforting food that reminded me of my childhood. In the afternoons, I would walk along the shore, barefoot in the sand. I sat for hours, reading to my children, telling them fairy tales, and whispering about the bright future that awaited them. Here, there were no judging eyes, no gossip, only me, my children, and the endless embrace of the sea. This peace was the best medicine. It slowly healed the deep wounds in my soul. I slept better, ate better. My haggard face regained its color, and a genuine smile returned to my lips. Sometimes, looking in the mirror, I no longer recognized the tired, submissive woman of the past. I saw a mother, a woman reborn from the ashes, strong and resilient. The long-awaited day finally arrived on a summer morning. As the first sunbeams crept through the window, labor pains hit, fierce and relentless. But instead of panic, I felt a strange calm. I was ready. Everything went according to my father's plan. I was taken to a reputable maternity hospital where a team of the best doctors was waiting. They were my father's trusted friends, soldiers in white coats, and their presence gave me absolute security. The pain intensified, threatening to tear me apart. I clenched my teeth. In the moments I thought I couldn't endure, I thought of my two babies, my father's face, my mother's eyes. I wasn't alone. I had to be strong. Push, dear. I see the head. The midwife cheered. I channeled all my remaining strength into one final push. A moment later, a clear, powerful cry erupted, filling the delivery room. It was my son. I couldn't savor the joy as the pain returned. I still had one more angel. I took a deep breath and continued my fight. A few minutes later, another cry, slightly weaker but full of life. It was my daughter. Congratulations, a boy and a girl. Mother and babies are perfectly healthy, the chief doctor announced, beaming. When the two tiny red lives were placed on my chest, all pain vanished. I trembled as I touched their faces, their tiny clenched fingers. My children, my flesh and blood. They were beautiful, like angels. Tears flowed, not of pain or sorrow, but of overwhelming joy and boundless love. I named my son Liam and my daughter Ava. I chose names that felt strong and full of hope for the new life we were starting. Looking at their sleeping faces, I knew my life had entered a new chapter. From this moment on, I no longer lived for myself. I lived for Liam and Ava. Life as a new mother to twins was hard, but it filled every day with sweet, busy happiness. The sleepless nights, the endless diaper changes, the moments when both cried simultaneously, none of it tired me. Just seeing Liam's smile, or Ava's adorable yawn, made all the hardship disappear. 6 months later, as the babies entered the weaning stage, I realized a problem. The commercial baby food, though convenient, lacked the quality and traceability I wanted. Using the nutrition knowledge I'd acquired during my pregnancy, I decided to prepare all their food myself. My small kitchen became a lab where I experimented with purees and simple vegetable mashes, ensuring they were delicious and nutritious. Seeing Liam and Ava thrive, plump and healthy, my neighbors became curious. I happily shared my recipes. Soon, one neighbor, then two, asked me to prepare baby food for their own children, too busy with work to do it themselves. An idea sparked. Why not turn this into a small business? I needed financial independence to give my children the best life without relying on my parents. I started cautiously. I created a small Facebook page with a simple name, Liam and Ava's Kitchen. I posted photos of the meals I made for my twins, the fresh ingredients I chose, along with heartfelt advice on child nutrition. I didn't advertise loudly. I shared with the sincerity of a mother. The first orders came from neighbors, then their friends. Word spread. Mothers shared the secret of a clean, mindful baby food source. My Facebook page grew. The positive reviews and pictures of babies happily eating, sent in by customers, were my greatest motivation. The work intensified. By day, I cared for the twins. At night, after Liam and Ava were asleep, I busied myself in the kitchen, prepping, cooking, and packing orders. It was exhausting but fulfilling. For the first time, I felt the happiness of earning money with my own labor and passion. I was no longer the woman who depended on her husband. I had become a single mother entrepreneur, a stronger, more confident version of myself. Time flowed quickly in the seaside town. My brand, Liam and Ava's Kitchen, grew. From a tiny kitchen, I rented a larger space and hired 2 assistants. I was busy, but I always took time in the afternoon to take the children to the beach. Liam and Ava were growing fast, already babbling mama. Their sweet voices melted away all my fatigue. I had almost forgotten about Mark and Jessica. The past was a distant, faded film I no longer wished to rewatch. But one afternoon, while scrolling online for new weaning ideas, a headline on a news site made me pause. Ex-secretary gets suspended sentence for assaulting CEO's wife, reveals shocking details. Curious, I clicked. The article detailed Jessica's trial. With the video evidence, she had been sentenced to 2 years suspended probation. But what caught my eye were the final paragraphs, which recounted Mark's testimony, where he completely denied all responsibility, blaming Jessica and portraying himself as a tragic husband deceived by his mistress. Then came Mark's own sentence. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison for fraud, embezzlement, and economic misconduct, causing serious loss. Thompson Legacy Construction was bankrupt, all assets seized to repay debt. I could only breathe a long sigh. 7 years, a heavy price for ambition and deceit. I scrolled through the comments. Hundreds, thousands of people left scathing critiques. They called Mark a coward, Jessica a villain. Some expressed sympathy for the wife who suffered a miscarriage and mental instability. They didn't know that the wife was now living a life happier and more peaceful than ever. A year flew by. Liam and Ava were now bright, mischievous toddlers, running around the house. My brand was well known, even receiving orders from neighboring states. I had bought a small car for deliveries. My children and I had a life full of laughter and freedom. After a year away, my longing for home and my parents grew. Liam and Ava were old enough for a long trip. I knew it was time to go back. I was no longer running. I wanted to return proudly as Claire, a strong, confident single mother, not the victim of a broken marriage. When I told my parents I was coming home for a visit, my mother couldn't hide her emotion. Her voice trembled. "Come home, darling. Come home. Your father, your mother, and your grandfather miss the three of you so much." I spent a week arranging my business affairs, handing over management to my staff. I booked the flights and packed our bags. The night before we left, I stood on the balcony, looking out at the coastal city that had sheltered my children and me for a year. My heart was full of gratitude. This land had healed me and given me a fresh start. When the plane landed at the familiar airport, breathing in the slightly cooler air of my hometown, a mix of emotions washed over me. It was the same city, the same streets, but I was no longer the woman I used to be. My parents and grandfather were waiting at the arrival hall. The moment they saw Liam and Ava, they couldn't hold back their tears. My mother rushed to hug and kiss her grandchildren. My father, the perpetually stern colonel, also had misty eyes, fumbling awkwardly, unsure which child to hold first. My grandfather just stood there, smiling gently, his eyes sparkling with happiness. Seeing that reunion, I knew my decision to return was absolutely right. The days spent at my parents' house were days of complete happiness. The house was always filled with the laughter of Liam and Ava. My father, the formidable colonel, was now a doting grandfather, happily crawling on the floor to let the two ride him like a horse. My mother spent all her time in the kitchen, cooking the delicious dishes that my children and I loved. During a family meal, I casually asked my mother about Mark. I asked, not out of lingering feeling, but simply out of curiosity about the life of a person who had once passed through mine. My mother sighed, putting down her chopsticks. "He was released from prison a few months ago, dear. Heard he was paroled early for good behavior." "I see," I replied calmly. "What is he doing now?" "He's miserable, my dear," my mother recounted. "His company went bankrupt, and all his assets were confiscated. His parents, out of shame, sold their house in the countryside and moved away. He left prison with nothing, no home, no money, no relatives. Some old neighbors said he's working as a loader at the wholesale market, constantly moving, and doesn't talk to anyone." I listened in silence. The image of the elegantly suited man with a wineglass, confidently discussing multi-million-dollar projects, and the image of a solitary man carrying heavy loads in a foul-smelling market. The two images overlapped unbelievable, yet true. "And what about Jessica?" I asked. "That girl also disappeared after the trial, probably went back to her hometown. Heard she's also having a hard time, known as a girl with a child and a criminal record. No one dares to marry her. Her parents disowned her too, an unhappy ending for both. They once had everything at their fingertips: money, illicit love, and conniving schemes. But in the end, all that remained was destitution, loneliness, and disgrace. I didn't feel glee, only a lingering sadness. Sadness for the lives they had destroyed with their own hands, simply due to greed and selfishness. "Enough about them," my father interrupted, cutting off my thoughts. "Eat your dinner, children. Let the law of karma decide their fate." Yes, let the law of karma decide their fate. I no longer had the right or the responsibility to care about their lives. I put a piece of meat on Liam's plate and a piece of fish on Ava's. Watching them eat happily, I knew my happiness was here, simple and peaceful, in the embrace of my family. I decided to stay in the city for a while. I could manage my business in the coastal town remotely, and I wanted Liam and Ava to spend more time with their grandparents. One weekend afternoon, my father and I took the twins out in their stroller. We avoided the noisy shopping malls, choosing instead to stroll through the old quarter, with its narrow alleys, ancient trees, and street vendors carrying the flavors of memory. Liam and Ava were delighted, pointing and babbling nonstop. I stopped in front of a soft pretzel street vendor, a childhood favorite. "2 pretzels, please," I told the old woman. As the old woman bagged the pretzels, my father nudged my arm gently. His eyes directed me across the street. Curiously, I looked over, and then I froze. Across the street, a man was hunching over, pushing a tricycle cart heavily loaded with goods. He was wearing faded, dirt-stained work clothes, his face gaunt and darkened by the sun, his short-cropped hair exposing a prematurely wrinkled forehead. It took me a few seconds to realize it was Mark. He looked so different, completely devoid of any trace of the handsome, stylish CEO he once was. His solitary, resigned appearance made me slightly uncomfortable. He was struggling to push the cart up a small incline, his back soaked with sweat. It felt like an invisible orchestration of fate. Just then, a bag of goods on his cart slipped and fell onto the road. Mark hastily stopped the cart and rushed to pick it up. He lifted his head, and our eyes accidentally met. Time seemed to stop. Mark's face instantly went pale. He froze, standing dead still in the middle of the street, forgetting the fallen bag. His eyes widened, looking at me as if he couldn't believe it. I saw confusion, deep shame, and an unconcealable pain in his gaze. I was equally flustered. I hadn't expected to run into him in such an awkward circumstance. I quickly turned my face away, intending to take the pretzels and leave immediately. But it was too late. He had seen me, and more importantly, he had seen Liam and Ava sitting in the stroller. Mark stood motionless in the middle of the road, ignoring the blaring car horns behind him. He didn't care about the bag that lay untouched on the ground. His entire world seemed to have shrunk to the two infant faces in the stroller. I saw his lips move but heard no sound. His gaunt, darkened face now displayed extreme astonishment, a profound disbelief mixed with a frantic glimmer of hope. Liam, my son, had eyes exactly like Mark's long, deep, single-lidded eyes, giving him a look that was both stubborn and intelligent. And Ava, my baby girl, had his chin and the corners of his mouth when she smiled. They were the undeniable copies of that man. Claire. He finally managed to utter my name. His voice was hoarse and unfamiliar, like someone else's. Is that really you? He started walking, staggering like a drunkard. He crossed the street, oblivious to the rushing traffic. A motorcycle had to brake sharply, the tires screeching on the asphalt. The driver cursed, but Mark didn't hear. He only walked toward us like a moth to a flame. My father subtly shifted, partially shielding the children's stroller. His sturdy arm was a silent, unwritten warning. The pretzel vendor, sensing the tension, quickly handed me the bag and quietly backed away. Mark stopped in front of us, the distance barely 2 steps. He looked at me, then back at the 2 children. The smell of sour sweat and heavy labor dust emanated from him, a bitter, alien scent. Are you doing well?" he stammered, a foolish and meaningless question. I didn't answer. I just looked at him in silence. This man, who had once wished death upon my children, was now standing here, staring at them with eyes that couldn't look away. Life truly was too ironic. Mark didn't wait for my answer, his eyes fixed on Liam and Ava again. He slowly knelt down, a heavy, slow movement, as if his legs could no longer hold him up. He knelt right there on the dirty sidewalk, in front of all the curious onlookers. No way," he murmured, shaking his head. "Your father. He said you couldn't save them." Tears began to flow from the hardened man's eyes. The tears rolled down his darkened face, mixing with the dirt, looking utterly pathetic. He reached out his trembling, grimy hand, trying to touch the stroller. "To touch my children. Don't." My father spoke up. His voice was not loud but sharp as steel. Mark's hand froze in midair. "Colonel." "Sir." Mark looked up at my father. His voice cracked with pleading. "Sir, I beg you." Then he turned to me, crawling forward, clutching the hem of my skirt. The action disgusted me, and I quickly took a step back. "Claire, I beg you," he wailed, his voice lost in desperation. "Tell me the truth. Tell me. Are they my children? Are they mine, Claire?" Bystanders began to gather. The whispers grew louder. I felt humiliated, not for myself, but for him. The man who had once been so arrogant, so full of himself, was now kneeling at my feet, weeping and begging like a beggar. His cold voice from that day at the bottom of the stairs echoed in my mind. "You should get your tubes tied and adopt our child." That remark and his pitiful image now were a stark, cruel contrast. Any slight pity that might have flickered within me was completely extinguished. He didn't deserve it. "Get up," I said. My own voice sounded cold and detached. "Stop making a scene." "No, I won't get up." Mark shook his head violently, tears and snot streaming down his face. "Unless you tell me the truth, I just need to know if they are my children. I'm begging you, Claire. As a final act of decency, Final act of decency. Did he still have the audacity to mention those words? I took a deep breath, fighting to maintain my composure. It was time to put an end to this, a cruel, decisive end. I slowly bent down and peeled his hand off my skirt. His fingers were cold and rough, calloused from labor. I detached each finger slowly, deliberately. Mark froze, perhaps feeling the coldness in my action. I stood up straight, lightly dusting off my skirt as if I had touched something filthy. I looked him directly in the eyes, which were red and tear-filled. The crowd around us fell silent, holding its breath. My father stood silently behind me, my solid rock. I offered a slight smile, a smile I knew was as sharp as a blade. "My children," I said, my voice quiet but clear, every word distinct, loud enough for everyone around to hear. "They don't have a father." Mark's face went blank. The hope in his eyes vanished, replaced by utter bewilderment. He stammered, "No, it can't be. Don't lie to me." I smiled coldly, a smile carrying all the contempt and bitterness I had suppressed for years. I tilted my head, looked him straight in the eye, and spoke one final sentence, one I knew would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Their father," I emphasized each word, "was struck by lightning and died a long time ago." As the sentence finished, I saw Mark's face collapse. He looked as if he'd been electrocuted, his body stiffening. Life seemed to drain from his eyes, leaving only the gray ash of despair. He slumped back onto the ground, utterly broken. I didn't look at him again. I turned to my father, my voice back to its composed state. "Let's go, Dad. The pretzels are getting cold." My father nodded slightly, his eyes reflecting satisfaction and pride. He pushed the stroller, and we calmly walked away, passing the man frozen on the pavement. The whispers of the crowd, the miserable sobbing of Mark, began to rise behind us, but none of us looked back. "You did the right thing," my father murmured, breaking the silence. "Yes, Dad," I replied softly. We said nothing more. We didn't need to. My father and I understood each other without words. He understood my finality, and I understood his unconditional support. The afternoon sun was golden, pouring through the ancient trees, dancing on the sidewalk. Liam and Ava had fallen asleep after their outing. Their little faces were chubby, innocent, and utterly peaceful. I looked at them, then at my aging father, whose hair was graying but whose back was still straight. A boundless sense of gratitude surged within me. The storm had truly passed my life. It had swept away a rotten marriage, a treacherous husband, and years of tearful youth. But it also left me with two priceless gifts, Liam and Ava. And most importantly, it left me with maturity, strength, and the ability to stand on my own 2 feet. I no longer hated Mark. The anger, the contempt all had vanished with my final words. Now, only a calm peace remained in my heart. He would have to live the rest of his life with remorse and self-recrimination. That was the sentence life had given him, a sentence far heavier than 7 years in prison. We arrived home as the sun began to set. My mother had prepared a warm dinner. The aroma of food filled the house, a scent of family, of peace. That evening, I sat in my room, watching Liam and Ava sleep. I gently touched the pearl earrings my grandmother had given me. The journey ahead for my children and me was long. There would be difficulties, there would be challenges. I didn't know where the future would take us, or who we would meet. But I was no longer afraid, because I knew that as long as my heart remained kind, as long as I walked on my own 2 feet, and as long as I had my family by my side, no matter where I went, it would be the path leading to happiness. The sky outside is beautiful, and so is my heart.